Bryson DeChambeau is known for his quirky, scientific approach to the game, monster drives, and excessive amounts of protein shakes. In this video, I'm going to break his swing down to see why it works so well and what you can copy to help you shoot better scores at the weekend. There's loads to talk about in his address position. To talk about the normal good stuff is his posture's amazing. He's got quite a nice relaxed spine angle, which is great for massive turns and creating speed. His balance point from the back of his lead arm is nicely over his toes and over the middle of his foot, and his backside just sort of sits nicely just behind the heels. He's perfectly in balance, and we should all be trying to get into that position from face on. Interestingly, Bryson has a really weak left hand grip. Normally we look to have the V's of the hands up somewhere towards the trail shoulder, but Bryson actually has this more towards his lead shoulder. We all know Bryson is a golfing machine cult follower. A big part of his golf is a flat left wrist and trying to swing it on a single plane. So what he does is he actually sets a flat left wrist at address with the mega weak grip, with the V's pointing up towards his lead shoulder, and then he just works to maintain that, with the idea being he can control his loft and control his club face ankle because his left wrist is always flat. The other thing that is interesting and different about Bryson is how high his hands are at address. He has a very ulnar left wrist, which means the shaft points very high. The single plane theory from the golfer machine is that you can swing the club up and down the elbow plane, which is generally the lie angle of the club. And again, he just sets himself on that position. His right elbow is touching the plane line and the shaft is perfectly on that line. And the idea is he's going to try and do his best to swing up and down that as much as he can. He has moved away from this slightly since he gained loads of distance in 2020, but the fundamentals of it are still there. As he takes the club away, you see his hands tracking that line nicely. The club's just below, but actually gets onto the sort of perfect position. His right leg straightens an awful lot, and his left knee comes forward loads. If I just mark out where his knees are, you can sort of see, even though the camera angle's slightly changing, right from the word go, his right knee's moving back and his left knee's moving forwards. That is hip turn. He's creating a monster amount of hip turn. Look how much his knees have moved there. It's just, the bigger the hip turn, the more freedom his shoulders have to turn, and it's basically the bigger backswing he can make, and we know he hits it far, and this is a big part of it. From face on, some interesting things here are how much left his hips go as he turns back. This is one of those things where people are always saying, you've got to transfer your weight back, but actually at the top of the swing, you definitely wouldn't suggest Bryson. It's definitely more left leaning. There's more of his body to the left side of centre than there is to the right side of it, which I really like. That's a great move for amateur golfers in terms of ball striking and wanting to hit draws. We know that to hit a draw, you basically have to get ahead of the ball to hit it on the inside of the arc, and getting your body ahead of it is a massive part of it. So I really like that. It's also worth talking about this monster shoulder turn, and actually what's helped facilitate that is a bit of a head turn. His head's twisted back as he's turned back, which isn't a bad idea for those golfers who lack mobility and struggle for backswing length. But it all starts from the ground up for me. It starts with a massive hip turn. It then allows a bigger shoulder turn, and then that little head turn at the top is just going to allow you to go even further. Now, Bryson doesn't have a long swing by John Daly standards, but that's because he doesn't really cock his wrists up at all. In the backswing, he's much more like hinges his right wrist back. He keeps his left wrist very flat, and any amount of wrist cocking up and down might affect contact. So he's not quite fully removed that from his swing, but he's taken a lot of that out compared to the average player. Now, as we start down, we're in a period of golf where golf instructors are trying to get players to open their body as much as possible. Now, Bryson doesn't really believe in that himself. He believes more in pulling the arms down and shifting the weight forwards. So what we're going to see as he transitions is his arms, or certainly his hands, moving back onto that plane, the shaft. That's an absolutely perfect halfway down position. I can still see both his knees. His shoulders have been held back. His club's perfectly on plane, and that face is perfectly square. I've got no issues with that at all. His hands are still tracking, and as he swings down, you can sort of see how he lines that club up with the original plane line absolutely perfectly. Now, interesting things to note here. Yes, Bryson has turned his hips and his shoulders are slightly open, but he's got massively closed forearms here. Like a classic ball striker's move. Ben Hogan is like famous for the big gap between his forearms at impact. Now, that might help Bryson hit it from the inside because does have some element of closed, but I really, really like how that works. Golfers who straighten their right arm too early will fat the ball, but Bryson has managed to maintain some bend in his arm, still got that flat left wrist, and he's managed to square the face up without spinning his body super, super, super hard. He obviously is spinning his body a lot compared to the average person, but compared to a lot of pros that we see on TV, I can't see any of his left leg. I can see all of his left arm. There's a massive amount of daylight between his arms. You know, this is quite a closed body position compared to like the modern swing, modern in quotation marks. From face on, you know, we can't help but talk about this massive hip shift. You know, that's almost like a 6-inch shift forwards. There's nothing going back. There's never in Bryson's swing is there anything that really makes his weight go backwards. It's like it's centered to forward at the top, and then it's even more forwards coming down. What I really like here is like that left wrist and club, straight left arm to straight left wrist. I absolutely love this position. It's really, really hard to do. You don't see it very often. But again, when that left arm is perfectly straight and that club is perfectly straight, like in that, you know that that's a really efficient swing. He's releasing the club at just the right time. Most golfers are in a position where the club head is past the hands at impact, which is where you've released it early. You're going to hit it too high and probably fat it. Not many golfers, but some have the club more back here, which is more of a delayed release, which is okay for control, but it does mean you're losing out on a bit of speed. But Bryson gets that perfect straight line with a massive hip shift without opening his body too much. He's going to draw it every time, and that's absolutely his intention. So there's nothing wrong with that. Now, as he swings through, we see the club head swinging through fastest, which is efficient. That's the correct sequencing. He's extending his body. His arms are really straight, and he comes through with that flat left wrist. We don't see this very often. I would say I don't see it very often. We don't really see it very often because Bryson's got that super weak grip. He can afford to keep that left wrist flat and turning over without the face actually closing, which if you've got a stronger grip and you try to do that, the face comes through super shut and you're probably going to hit the ball way left. So that's not really something you can do unless you've got Bryson's grip, but it's just really cool to note. And also look at how aesthetic this shaft is, perfectly parallel to like the original shaft plane that he started on and that he swung on pretty much the whole time, and then into a nice balanced finish. From face on, Bryson swings through, and look at how extended his arm to club are. Again, let's just talk about efficiency and getting the speed out of your body and through the club. This is exactly what that looks like. There's no wasted energy here. I really, really like the curve of Bryson's body here, where he's got his hips forward, his head stayed back. You know, that is the look of greatness. You know, we see this in all of the best swings of all time. Hips forward, head back, nice arch to the back, straight arms, long right arm into the club. It's absolutely flawless. And then up into the finish. So it's not all super quirky. He does address the ball differently to the average tour player, but there's actually a lot of stuff in here which isn't quirky at all. It's actually very textbook. If you're a mid handicap player and you're looking to try and improve your game, you can look to Bryson as someone to copy. You know, think about the massive turns, the shift of his weight forwards right from the start of the swing, and think about that massive extension through the ball with a flat left wrist. If you keep your left wrist flat, you're going to manage the loft and the club face angle better throughout the swing, and you're going to just excel at iron and wedge play, which are crucial parts of the game for golfers looking to reduce their handicaps.